Welcome to the 243rd edition of Europe Calling. My name is Maximilian Fries. I am Managing Director of Europe Calling, and I particularly welcome today's discussion guest, whom we will present in more detail in a moment. Today is a special evening because I am not going to be doing the moderation by myself as usual, but for the first time with Amelie Pasmans, who has been the second face at Europe Calling since April, thanks to our sponsoring members. And thank you, Amelie, for being with us for almost half a year. And for the first time, you're going to really co-moderate. And Amelie also has contributed significantly to organizing this and designing this webinar. So it's great that she also gets to moderate it. And then the second reason that makes this evening special is the topic. Almost exactly a year ago, together with Campact and the Israeli sister organization Zazim, that's Raluca's organization, we already discussed the pathways to peace in a major webinar. So today, a year later, a lot has changed. Trump has been re-elected as president, and there is a ceasefire, at least on paper, the 20-point plan. The Israeli hostages that were still alive who were still alive are free. But the one thing that hasn't changed is the situation in Gaza and the suffering of people there in the region in general. And that seems to actually intensify rather than abate. So that's our topic tonight, what's been going on there. And we have three guests for that. And we're looking forward to hearing from them. But before we start, just a few short house announcements. We're going to speak both German and English tonight. If you need help with this, we do have interpreters for you. And if you click the small globe in the control box, you can select your language, and that's going to be repeated in English now. So, as always, you can use Slido in order to vote up other people's questions and also ask your own questions. So please use Slido. We have almost 1,500 registrations, so a lot of people will listen. There will be a lot of questions. The more likes we get, the easier it'll be for us to actually filter get the right questions. And of course, please tell me your name or some name, because if I have to repeat anonymous 10 times, that's not so great. So this will be recorded as always, and it will be a podcast in YouTube. Please bear that in mind when you ask questions. And now over to my co-moderator. It's really cool to be able to say that. Amelie, please.
Yeah, thank you, Max. I'm also very happy to be here. And it's an important conversation we're having tonight. The conversation surrounding Israel and Palestine in Germany is heavily influenced by the concept of Staatsraison and by feelings of communal guilt due to the Nazi past in Germany. There's a variety of opinions as to what exactly the learnings from the Holocaust should be. Some, for example, say that Germany needs to back Israel no matter what, while others stress the importance of Germany paying special attention to guarding human rights and the prevention of any further genocides no matter what. So I'm very happy to introduce the speakers. I'm going to switch to German because the first speaker is going to speak in German.
So we're really looking forward to welcoming Philipp Holzapfel tonight. He joined the panel last week. He's a non-resident fellow at the Barcelona Centre for International Affairs, and together with other Middle East experts has launched the initiative Beyond Staatsraison, whose proposals for peace in the Middle East are supported by many prominent individuals and organizations. Previously, he was a member of the cabinet of the EU High Representative Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Josep Borrell, and before that in the German diplomatic corps on multiple assignments in the Middle East and Northern Africa. Mr. Holzapfel, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for having me, first of all. Actually, I can't quite see on the screen how many participants are here. I heard you say that it's a lot, so I'll try and be brief. For years now, 3 decades actually, I've been focusing on the Middle East region, the so-called MENA region, including North Africa. Well, it's a region that has not only come into focus ever since October 7th, 2 years ago, but now it's been approaching, it's like an airplane approaching an airport slowly, but here we had almost had a crash 2 years ago, because we have this core conflict which has not been resolved over many years. So we have published this paper, Beyond Staatsraison, just to say that it's also almost a social psychological experiment. The profile of those who've joined there, well, let me say it's not an open letter. We've had a request with 1,000 signatures, but actually the profile we had was that would be people, experts who have been looking at the region for more than 10 years, specifically with the conflict between the Palestinians and Israel, people who have spent a lot of time there and who actually learned the local languages. So we're not talking about translators or interpreters here. We're looking at people here, we're talking about people here who really made an effort to go there to feel the situation and what people feel like. And the thesis, and I think this was confirmed, was the following. Well, as soon as you have learned quite a lot about this region, about people, about their culture, about the history, then the whole spectre, the whole range of conclusions will become smaller. So no matter what your political position is, let me say I'm from a very pro-Israel background, but we're talking 20 to 30 years ago almost. Well, depending on where you are politically, dealing with issues of the policy of the Staatsraison, but moving away from this thinking, because it's actually a very one-sided policy, Staatsraison only, coming, having its history in the Shoah, the Holocaust, so in German history. And all this to say that for us it was important when publishing this paper to consider the historical responsibility of Germany, but also of the whole of Europe. Now we're looking at the war in Gaza. We have an expert group of genocide researchers. Well, I'd say they agree in saying that this has been genocide. Okay, we've had a deal, we've had a ceasefire, but we haven't seen a major improvement of the situation. And to just take a closer look to find out whether with this group of people, practitioners, people from the academia, from think tanks, a whole range of different backgrounds and foundations based in Germany, belonging to different political positions. So we have everything in there in this group represented who produced that paper. And we have 8 pages that we agree on in terms of what a new German external policy could look like. Because Germany has been, stepping on the brakes for a long time. It's been slowing things down. And what will be the consequences should Germany take on this kind of policy? The basic idea behind that is something that has nothing to do with the zero-sum solution. It's neither pro-Israel nor pro-Palestinians. Of course, there are 2 poles. And, it's like a linear range, if you like. So we have an extreme side, pro-Palestinian, no place for Israel, no place for Jews in the region. And the other extreme, we have that too. We find them in the Israeli government at the moment. So they would like to get rid of all Palestinians. But there's a third pole on this linear range, which is in the middle. And that's the pole. Well, I know where Karim and Raluca can be found. I've been in touch with Raluca before tonight's meeting, obviously. So these activities and the Israeli peace group, that is indispensable. They're both pro-Israel and pro-Palestine. Now, the issue with Staatsraison, if you like, you'd find the paper online. It's actually in the chat here, .net, Raison, spelled AI. There you can take a look, so I don't need to present it here in all its glorious details. But just to say, for Germany and the EU, it's about international law and to implement international law in all its facets. With the logic behind Staatsräson, we find that this is interpreted in a wrong way. So actually the term is used, but semantically, it's actually not quite the right term for this kind of debate. Don't want to go into semantics here, but it entails legal obligations. These have not been implemented in terms of the ATT, the arms trade agreement, or the opinions produced by the International Criminal Court dating back to July last year on the Israeli presence in the occupied regions, Eastern Jerusalem, West Bank, and the Golan Heights, of course. So you can still import products produced in these occupied areas. You can produce them you can introduce them into the EU by importing them. They're no longer under the preference scheme, but still they can be imported. Now compare this to Ukraine and Crimea. It's a different story. And the Donbass region, here the EU was very quick in saying we will have an import ban. And this is what it says in the opinion, last year's opinion by the Criminal Court. So you cannot have business relations in such a case. So that is just one example where legal obligations had not been adhered to, not been implemented. And also, of course, the ethical, the moral obligations in history. Holocaust, it happened in Europe, with Germany being the leading force. It was not Palestinians, but the Palestinians in reality have paid the price. They might have said at the time, the decision makers, we didn't see another solution. We needed to choose this option. We had to go for violence and expelling people. So the occupation force that the International Criminal Court has always called illegal in terms of international law, and we can't see any end to it. So it does actually imply a breach of a basic rule of international law. So you cannot occupy and call land your own. And this is part of German history, of course, Germany's responsibility. We carry historic responsibility towards the Jewish people. And this issue cannot be seen in isolation, with the effects this had on not only on the Palestinian people, but other peoples in the region or Jewish communities also in the Arab world. So it won't do to just say, well, we support Israel, kind of whitewashing our shame, our past, our guilt. Actually, this is illegal, looking at the German legal provisions in criminal law. Now, I don't want to go into legal details too much, but what we've seen is that the political measures, the policies were not effective, not at all. 7th October, this is actually proof of the non-effectiveness of any political measure having been taken before. And this is actually closely linked to how Germany plays in the United States and how they dealt with the conflict. Let me say there is a standing term amongst experts, which is both sides narrative. So often we hear criticism, you're treating both sides the same way, although it's actually not, it's actually a very unequal situation. But I'm sure you'll have questions about that. Well, can you not speak of two sides? Even, it's not a symmetrical situation, that's for sure. This has to be taken into account. What is more, Germany and thus the EU, given Germany's attitude, Germany's stance, we've seen a one-sided politics. There were spoilers on both sides. Spoiler in the sense that we're talking about camps or people who undermined or the peace process, Hamas, obviously, but all other radical camps on both sides. So when it came to sanctions, we only looked to one side. So what did this lead to? It's actually a mirroring effect of radicalization. That's how I would call it. So we have the Palestinian side. And let me say that Hamas is on 3 different lists of sanctions by the EU, on the terror list, so-called terror list, on the list for the global human rights. And there's a specific regime, a scheme of sanctions. But the same effects that assets are frozen, financial assets are frozen, a ban on entering the country. It's like beating a dead horse, no? So it's a very political level. And this will lead to extremists on the other sides saying, whoopee, their enemies are being sanctioned and not them. So they feel they're right. They're actually encouraged. And on the Palestinian side, again, given the asymmetric situation, they live under occupation. They have lived under occupation for nearly 60 years. But the Palestinian side will see an effect of solidarity because they feel they're treated very unfairly. So the very question is, how did we get there? How did Hamas get to power? How comes that a party that does not recognize Israel, that produces horrible terror attacks, how come that they are backed by so many people? How come they came to power in the first place? In 2006, they won the elections in Gaza, but also in the West Bank. They had the absolute majority in parliament, if not an absolute majority of votes. So the Western donors and other international organizations stopped funding, stopped aid, and Hamas took over Gaza with violence. And ever since 2007, we have seen the terror rule, the violent rule of Hamas in Gaza. Well, at the same time, no aid deliveries are possible. No calories are permitted into the country, into the region. At the same time, we see press reports from Israel, and we find very little in European and Western media stating that Netanyahu's government not only tolerated Hamas, the Hamas government, but actually let them be in order to avoid Palestine becoming a state, just avoid the two-state solution. The Sinn Bet, Alinon head, talked about $1.4 billion actually. They were brought to Gaza via Doha, and they weren't even hiding it. And that's what Netanyahu said in Knesset. That's what we're doing to avoid a Palestinian state. Then the horrible terror attack on October 7th. There is nothing that could possibly justify it. There's no sweet talking about it. And that's what it states in our paper. It should have been an alarm call, a serious alarm call reminding people, but the situation is out of control in the region, and that a radical Islamist movement had taken control in what remained of the state, of the region, that might become a Palestinian state, that this organization is actually used to divide Palestinians, and that way it's an excuse not to start peace talks. Then we have an offer of peace. That was back in 2002, in March 2002, pronounced at the summit of the Arab League in Beirut. It was an agreement that was adopted. I think you're showing up to remind me to stick to my time. If ever anybody under 40 has ever heard of it, there's a special award for you. Now, you might have come across it, but this peace initiative is actually confirmed not just by the Arab League and all its members, but by 75 member states of the OECD. It's actually, we see a resolution every year. It's renewed. I think it's on item 17, so it doesn't get to the headlines anymore, but there is a peace offer. A peace offer in the sense that to have a Palestinian state with Eastern Jerusalem as the capital in the former state territory of 1967, and to find a fair solution for the refugee issue. I'm happy to come back to this in detail. 700,000 Palestinians or Palestinian Arabs have been displaced from the region under the mandate. So we're talking with 6 million registered as refugees with UNRWA, the UN aid agency for refugees. Actually, this agency was to be dismantled. It was called a July for Korean refugees as well, and it was stopped a couple of years later. So there was not that this UNRWA agency would stay. So for Korea, we no longer have it, but we still have the agency acting on behalf of Palestinians. So this is actually quite a symptom of a conflict that was not resolved. What is so interesting about the Arab Peace Initiative, the API, is the right of return. It actually doesn't spell out the right of return. It's the UN resolution, General Assembly 194, that spells it out. They have a directive clearly stating that those who want to go home and live in peace with their neighbors, they should have the right to either go back or receive compensation. This is one of the very important issues. Can I just stop you here? Because there's more to come. Well, we have Trump's 20-point plan. And this is really beyond any legitimacy amongst under international law. Now, from day to day, we see breaches to this 20-point plan. We see breaches from Israel. We see breaches committed by Hamas. So unfortunately, can't be very optimistic. There's a slight silver lining on the horizon still, but there should be more hope given by Europe, because we do have the means. Europe and Germany, within Europe. Well, what can I say? Sort of the co-driver, if you like, the passenger seat. But we do have influence. We can take influence on Israel. It's the largest trade partners. I think 2 of 3 flights go from Ben Gurion Airport to the EU. So 2 of 3 planes who leave Israel go to the EU. The question is, are we capable to act? But yes, the EU could take action. And it has a lot to do with Germany's attitude, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Super. Vielen Dank, Herr Holzapfel, für die Einordnung.
Thank you, Mr. Holzapfel.
Weiter, and I will switch to English to introduce the other speakers. Next up, we welcome Raluca Ganea, the founding executive director of Zazim Community Action, Israel's biggest campaigning community engaging and mobilizing Israelis, both Arabs and Jews, for peace and democracy and against the occupation. She was already with us at the last webinar about a year ago, and we are happy to hear about the Zazim again. Raluca served in different roles in Israeli civil society for the last 26 years. Among other things, she was part of the launching team of the Geneva Accord Peace Initiative and worked as a campaign and project manager at the Geneva Initiative. Raluca has a bachelor's in political science and philosophy from the Tel Aviv University. And with that, I give the floor to you, Raluca, and maybe also try sticking to the 50 minutes so we have enough time for questions later. Thank you.
Sure, you can remind me when I'm getting closer to the end. Thank you for having me. And first, I just want to share one thought following what Philip has said. He talked a lot about the EU policy and the EU role in solving the conflict, and I want to really strengthen that. Last year, in the previous webinar that I attended, we were 2 Palestinians and 2 Israelis, all of us from civil society, and it was really good for the time to hear these voices. But now we're in a different situation. And I think the fact that this year we have a Palestinian, an Israeli, and a European speaker is very much in place. Netanyahu's policy in the last 2 years and before has led to what he actually fought against all his life, internationalizing the conflict. The occupation, the war is no longer a domestic Israeli issue, but it's an agenda of the international community. And I think this is one of the opportunities that has come up of this horrible crisis that we have right now. And the EU and the European countries must have an active role in solving the conflict. And I think the people that have decided to spend their evening joining this webinar, people from across Europe, have also an important role in pressuring their governments, in raising their voices in Europe for solving this conflict. And I want to thank you for taking the time to do it. Before I speak about the situation in Israel, I do want to say that talking about the situation in Gaza is no doubt the most urgent thing. We hope that the genocidal war is over, but in the last few days, Israel has attacked in Gaza. It's in response to whatever Hamas violations of the ceasefire agreement, but the price is again paid by innocent people. People who hoped that once the ceasefire agreement is in place, they at least can sleep through the night without fearing the Israeli air bombings, even if they spend their nights in tents without enough water, sanitation, or food. But now this is even that is not guaranteed in the weeks since the ceasefire agreement is in place, and certainly not in the last few days. And it's not only the most urgent thing, but it's also a shared responsibility of all of us. Of course, the international community, the EU, the Arab and Muslim countries, and certainly it's my responsibility as an Israeli citizen. And it's very important for me to say that. The genocidal war that Israel conducted in Gaza was conducted in my name, even though I was against it, like many others. I never supported it, but it was still in our names. And I believe that acknowledging our responsibility as Israelis is crucial. It's crucial for any process of reconciliation between our societies, and also for our own rehabilitation inside the Israeli society. We won't be able, and I'm sure that Germans can relate to that. I don't think we can have rebuild our society after this horrible thing if we don't acknowledge it and take responsibility. And we actually, so much has been broken in our society in the last 2 years that we need to build a new ethos that Israelis can come together around. The situation in Israel at the moment is a combination between great relief and also facing many challenges ahead. The relief part is obvious. The hostages who survived are back. I don't need to plan what I will do in case there will be a siren due to rockets being fired, and no more waking up in the small hours of the night because of a missile attack. The majority of the reserve forces of the Israeli army were released from duty after 2 years. It has taken a toll on hundreds of thousands of families, their livelihood, the entire economy. It's supposed to be a time for us to start healing as a society. But on the other hand, the ceasefire is very, very fragile. It is not at all clear how it will be possible to move to the second stage of Trump's plan. And Israel itself, as a society, is falling apart. We have a minority government that turned against its citizens. They deserted us on October 7th and didn't take responsibility since. Netanyahu and his partners are moving forward with a judicial overhaul that is trying to crash what has remained from our democratic institutes. We have a police that is being controlled. It's actually a militia controlled by a far right-wing Jewish terrorist that is a blunt racist and supports Jewish supremacy. And he's operating excessive violence against protesters. The government is we are entering an election year. The elections are supposed to be the latest in November 26, exactly a year from now. And the government is using every trick in the book to make sure that it won't be a fair election, fair democratic elections. From trying to suppress the votes of the Palestinian citizens of Israel and to prevent them from running for office, and you name it, every trick in the book. I can say personally, as a human being, as a mother, after the ceasefire agreement, I felt I need to rest. Like I need to take some time off to go back to some kind of a normal routine. I know that all the normal people, like the ordinary people in Israel, feel the same. But as an activist, I also know that it's only us, the ordinary people, that need to rest, and we need to take some time off, and we need a routine. And it's a privilege that we don't have, because the spoilers, the Israeli spoilers, on our side, are not taking a moment to rest. On the contrary. So there's so much ahead, and we need to gather our strength after these very, very challenging 2 years and keep going. There's no other choice. So while the war was going on, there wasn't really any space to campaign, and I'm talking about mental space, to campaign on anything else rather than how to stop the war. And in the last year or so, we focused mainly on campaigns calling Israelis to refuse to take part in war crimes. This was a carefully phrased slogan, taking into consideration that calling soldiers to refuse is illegal in Israel. So we didn't do that. We just asked the people, soldiers or not soldiers, to make sure that they do their legal and moral duty to refuse to take part in war crimes that are against the Israeli law, same as they are against the international law. And even that very simple ask was very difficult to convey. We had most of the, I'm sorry, we have an unwelcome guest into the call. Most of the billboard company, for instance, refused to post their messages on the billboards in Israel. There were just 2 companies in all the country that agreed to do that. But this is again part of our understanding that we must build an ethos of most of the people who don't want to be part of a genocide, who don't want to take part in genocide, and they need an alternative. And we need to remind them of their values and of what can be done and what should be done. But even though we focused a lot on how to try and stop the war, from the very beginning, from October 8th, basically, in 2023, it was clear for me and for us that what we did until that moment wasn't enough. Because before October 7th, we were part of Netanyahu's political vacuum. In the last 15 years, Netanyahu has created such an absolute vacuum that left no room for anything except of his paradigm of managing the conflict, not solving the conflict, not ending the occupation, managing the conflict. And that involved, of course, strengthening Hamas, because Netanyahu doesn't want a Palestinian state next to Israel. So the solution is to strengthen Hamas and to weaken the Palestinian Authority. This, of course, exploded in our faces. And at the beginning, it seemed so obvious that now that this paradigm of managing the conflict has collapsed, people will realize that the only alternative is ending the occupation and have Palestine next to Israel, because the other alternative is a genocidal war and destroying the other side. And it seemed so obvious to me, and it was probably very naive, that nobody would choose that alternative of destroying the other side. But unfortunately, this is what happened. And I need to say also that for quite some time, it was really hard for us Israelis to believe that this is actually what's going on. We didn't want to believe that this is what is being done in our name. But the ministers in the government were very clear about that from the very beginning, that it's not about defeating Hamas, it's not about anything like that. It's not about restoring the security and safety of Israelis. It was a genocidal war in the intentions from the beginning.
Sorry, Raluca,
Yes.
could you put away the cat for the audio quality? I'm very sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Continue.
I hope you won't come back. I'm just I have kids in the other room and I locked the door so that they won't disturb us. But the cat was locked inside, so it's a lose-lose situation.
No worries. Thank you.
So as a human rights organization, when I established Zazim, it didn't even occur to me that we need to present an alternative vision to this managing the conflict concept. I was very clear that we need to do everything we can to end the occupation and to support Palestinian farmers, for instance, against adverse violence and so on, and do human rights work. But there was no positive vision and alternative of how the day after will look like. And this is something that we understood immediately after October 7, that we have to build this alternative. We have to talk about the day after. So even before the ceasefire, we formed this coalition of over 60 organizations called It's Time, this peace coalition that is working to build and strengthen the peace camp and make sure that the need to recognize Palestine as a state next to Israel is the most important thing on the agenda of the coming elections, for instance, and working towards that. And in September at Zazim, we did a campaign that collected support from Israelis who support a Palestinian state. And we delivered it to President Macron at the UN Assembly General in New York. And I think that the French-Saudi Arabian initiative indeed had an important role in pushing Trump to present his plan. And I'm really happy that we had some role in supporting that and in strengthening Macron against all of those who said the propaganda of the Israeli government was that this is an anti-Semite, anti-Israeli move, and it's awful. But it was really important for us as Israelis to bring the voice of the public in Israel that knows that it's not true, that it's a lie. We know that it's actually the Israeli interest, not only that it's the just thing to have Palestine next to Israel, but it's also the Israeli interest, and it's the only thing that will ensure the security of both sides and the prosperity of both sides. So now that the ceasefire is in place, our role is to make sure, first of all, that we don't go back to the war, and to make sure that we don't stay in this status quo that is too similar to October 6th. We need to make sure that we're moving indeed to the day after, that there is a peace negotiation, and that establishing a Palestinian state is actually the first stage of this negotiation. We need to be in the same, of course, the situation is not symmetrical in any way, but at least we need to come as two sovereign states recognized by the international community to this table, and then the results can be better. In Israel, there's another version of managing the conflict is, yes, of course, we need to talk with the Palestinians, and of course, we need to, at some point, reach some kind of a Palestinian state without an army, without that, without this, and many, many conditions on the reforms that need to be done on the Palestinian side and so on. But let's start this conversation, and at some point in 20 years from now, we'll get there. It's not an option. We can't do that. This needs to be the first thing. Israel needs to end the occupation and recognize Palestine. And then we can talk about the details, and we can start a much, much needed reconciliation process in which we as Israelis need to acknowledge what we have done and take responsibility about that. You're trying to say that my time is over?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Raluca, for the words and for explaining everything so well. I know there's a lot of questions, so we'll definitely get back to you. Now we will continue with the last panelist, and that is Karim Abu Al Roos, a Palestinian writer and researcher based in Belgium. His focus is on Middle Eastern politics and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. He holds a master's degree in democratization and human rights from the St. Joseph University in Beirut and will tell us about the situation in Gaza and in Palestine. So here's the floor for you, Karim.
Hello, good evening, everyone. And you hear me really well? I just want to make sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. And actually, it's really interesting that this number of attendants, it's makes it really interesting discussion. Yeah, and I wanted to thank Philippe and Raluca for what they say about the topics. I mean, in the beginning, I will just start to give an opinion about the context because let's keep the discussion like this. When you talk about what's happening in Gaza and 7th of October and everything happened after that, the genocide, the Israeli aggression, the international like involvement in this war, and the plan that President Trump signed it with some Arab and Muslim countries in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt last this month, 13th of October. It's like you need all the time. I mean, this is my opinion, and this is how I see it because I was in Gaza. I lived my whole life in Gaza, and I'm from the generation after the Israeli siege. So this generation in Gaza Strip, they are also no one focus on them, no one talk about them because they are the majority of the society now because they are the young people. So uh, the context of what happened, you can build everything on that. You can discuss the peace uh, deal or peace agreement, but you need to understand the context. So I guess there's era in the history with when Israeli government decided to block Gaza Strip in 2007 from the air, from the sea, from the land, and to keep Hamas government in Gaza because Hamas take control from the Palestinian Authority by violence. Okay, they were elected, but they will have no right to make a coup and to throw the Palestinian Authority to West Bank. So we had now at that time in the Palestinian political system actually two governments with two political program, with two view of the conflict. Palestinian Authority made huge steps to in the peace process until now, by the way, and Hamas choose to see the conflict in ideological, political, uh, like perspective not really following the Palestinian Authority, international agreements and Oslo agreements and something like that. So after 2007, Israel create a new kind of aggression to put 2 million people in 350 kilometers in the same place without electricity, without drinkable water, without any right of moving and movement. Also to control everything is coming out, is coming in. So you are actually doing a collective punishment from that time because Hamas is taking control of Gaza Strip. So these two political views of Hamas in Gaza Strip after 2007, when they take control, also they have a lot of support from regional countries, from some like Muslim Brotherhood. So Hamas at that time take a lot of ways, and also they were involving politically in the what it was called Arab Revolution after 2011, when the Muslim Brotherhood kind of take control of the region in a way, especially when they were in Egypt, in Syria, in Tunisia, and Hamas was in Gaza. So the Palestinian Authority continue to trying to make this peace process working to try to make Israeli government approved that there is a Palestinian rights. The Palestinian people have the right to make their states, live in peace, live in dignity, and also sovereignty, because you cannot, you cannot make a peace process when you are all the time crossing all the lines. Israel after 2007 crossed all the lines in Gaza Strip, and the Netanyahu policies, which he said it himself, he said it many times, and his government said, we keep Hamas in power because we need this divided Palestinian people. We need government in West Bank. We need government controlled by Hamas in Gaza. And this strategy also affected the Palestinian context, affected how the political Palestinian system works. And yeah, there was a lot of problems in this system after this division between Gaza Strip and West Bank. So, and that was the justification of Netanyahu all the time. How I can give them a state, it's like I'm giving them a state while they are not in the same line, while they are not accepting the Oslo agreement, while they are not like accepting to disarm themselves. And yeah, but so this was the first point in the context. Then the society in Gaza, I remember I was living in 4 hours electricity every day. 2 million people were sieged in a place, the dark, the closeness, the present, and you live this for 20 years. I mean, you can just imagine it how it was really violent to live in Gaza Strip, even without war, even in like ceasefire time. Like for example, if you want to go from the north to the south, it's just 30 minutes. So you live all your life in this place with 6 wars in 2008, 2012, 2014, 2021, and then 7th of October and the genocide after that. So this context also, it's important to take in consideration. I'm not justifying what Hamas did because I'm not a fan of Hamas, but Hamas is part of the Palestinian society. I cannot ignore this fact. I cannot ignore that there is people in the Palestinian society, they are followers of Hamas based on a lot of reasons, based on ideological reason, based on religious reason, based on political reason. Also, there is reasons for that, why there is people are supporting Hamas in the Palestinian society. So I wanted just to mention the last statistics. It just came yesterday from the Palestinian Statistics Center. It says that Hamas and the Palestinian society, they are not the majority, which is also for the Israeli government, the current government, Smotrich, Ben Gvir, Netanyahu government, they are trying all the time to make on the international media and the international public opinion that Palestinian society are Hamas. Everyone is Hamas. All Gaza people, even the children, are Hamas. So that's not true. It's not fact. Hamas is a political party. They have armed an army, like kind of forces, but we also have 14 political parties in Palestine. So they are also making the political system, and there are followers for the left parties. There is followers for Fatah party, which is a huge party in Palestine. So this context, it makes it really easy to go to the Palestinian side in the peace process, and it's not the first negotiations. Uh, it's not the first session and a plan and offer for peace. I believe that the Palestinian Authority and BLO before that made a lot of effort to make this peace process uh, uh, like working, let's say. And I remember like after Oslo agreement, PLO did historical decision when they and it was, by the way, a huge discussion about that inside the Palestinian society when they recognized Israel as a state. So the PLO and Palestinian Authority did that, and they still all the time. The president of Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, every day he said, "We are still believe in what we signed with Israel. We want two-state solution, and two-state solution in the Palestinian political scene, or the political system, it's not something we refuse it. Even Hamas itself, many times in 2017, they give like a new argument, a new, how I can say it, like a new vision of their party that they could uh, accept a two-state solution and disarm themselves and became political party if Israel accept that Palestinian say state will be in West Bank and Gaza Strip and East Jerusalem. So 7th of October happened because of decision of smaller group in Hamas. The Palestinian people, they didn't know anything about 7th of October. They just woke up as anyone in the world and they see what happened. And then they pay the price because what Israel did in Gaza, it crossed all the rules of war. And I remember UN gave a statement. It was really interesting, the statement. They say there is, in the war, there is also rules. There is rules. You cannot use like starvation as a weapon. You cannot kill without any focusing on what exactly you are doing. You cannot erase homes because uh, you say there's tunnels under a sea. Like look at the Rafah city, there is nothing left. They return it to a desert in a way. This is it's not responsible. It's not hurting Hamas. What you are doing as Israeli government, you are not hurting Hamas. You are hurting the Palestinian people. You are hurting the Gazans people who didn't live in peace, like a small time of peace since 2007. I mean, this generation who are now the majority of people in Gaza, they suffer from the siege in 2007. The war, when they became 2 years, in 2008. When they became 5 years, they had also the third war. When they became 10 years, they had also war in 2014. Now they are 18 years old, under the siege, and living genocide. Most of them maybe were killed, most of them be injured. So this is the context of how you can go forward to peace process, to understand that the Palestinian society is, there is diversity in it. The Palestinian society is not one line, it's not one school of politics, it's not one school of thoughts and ideology. And there is a lot of opinion about the conflict. There is Palestinian people, like they also follow the kind of aggression way to solve the solution, the conflict. But there's a lot of schools that say, let's talk, let's see a space to make peace. Let's say, um, let's bring people on the table to make a deal. And I think the 20 point of Trump, the Palestinian Authority said, we are welcoming this. I'm not talking of the, behind the Palestinian Authority, but I mean, they also welcome what Trump created in this deal. And also they say, we will take control of Gaza and disarm Hamas, and Hamas cannot participate in the elections after 1 year of ceasefire. So the Palestinian also authority are offering in this peace table of Trump in Sharm el-Sheikh something that could help to, I mean, to put 7th of October and the consequences of 7th of October on the Palestinian future aside, and trying to rebuild Gaza, trying to make Gaza alive again. And this is, I mean, this is what, as a Palestinian, we need. And we cannot also push peace while Israel is still continue to target, still to attack, still to also siege. Um, they are closing the crossing until now. Aid is not coming in fair numbers of trucks, because in the agreement there was 400 trucks and now almost 200, and some days they close the the crossing. And also there is something important uh, to mention here that the situation in Gaza, based on economic and also based on hospitals, schools, civil sector is actually collapsed. All of this system is collapsed. So they need to recover it really fast. We need a lot of international working on this kind of sector, especially the health sector, because it's really collapsed. There is just three or two maybe hospital are just working in the middle of Gaza. And yeah, so my opinion about Trump, it can work if the parties in the agreement are taking it serious and pushing to make it real, not just to give it as a political arguments or uh, interest in a way, political interest, as some countries are benefiting from this deal. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I wanted to, before we go into the Q&A, wait, I actually want to try something we've done 2 weeks ago, and I want to take half a minute of silence that for the whole audience to think about the hour you just heard and what that means to you, and then we go into the Q&A. But just to take a moment to think about it, because it was, I think, a very special moment. It was very intense from what we hear, and I want to give you the chance to kind of, for half a minute, just silence. Thank you. Thank you all. And now I think we are primed and ready to go for a little under an hour of Q&A. I'm just taking over here for a second, and you can all just jump in. So we're going to do it like this. We have the written questions already in the Slido, many good questions. So I'm going to kind of, as the voice of the audience, I will bring them in, and you four, including Amelie here, I'll pass the questions to you, and you can move them around. You can also use your hand symbol if you wanna come in on a question, but if you don't want to come in on a specific question, that's also fine. So not everyone has to answer, because I will then take them individually, probably the question. So not like in blocks, because that doesn't work. So use your hand symbol, and then we're gonna do a couple of written questions. We might do a couple of oral questions as well from the audience. So you can also raise your hand if you like to do that in the audience, and then we see how we get there. And I actually want to start and want to connect with a question we have here that is very much connected to what Karim ended with, and I want to give that question first to Philip. Oh, now my translation kind of failed. So the question is, number 2 question here: how can a political system in Gaza and the West Bank work without the Hamas, and can the PLO play a role in there? And what kind of political force can lead to a sovereign state? And I want to give that to Philip, because I think at the beginning you just spoke, there are many things in your paper, right? And I wondered what kind of role do you envision for the PLO and so the Palestinian Authority, and generally about that the political reform that in the Trump plan is kind of prerequisite to statehood. And I think our kind of Karim and Raluca both made clear that that is probably should be the other way around. So how do you look at that, the role of the governance of Palestine?
If you don't mind, I think it would be better for the Israeli and Palestinian speakers to answer that question first. I'm happy to come in, of course. I've lots to say.
Also happy to.
Yeah?
I mean, Karim, both. I mean, Karim already kind of spoke about this. That's why I kind of wanted to give it to you, because he essentially just said what it needs. So I wondered But we can also have Raluca, but also then Philip if nobody's speaking. I can't give the answer.
Yeah, I want just to say that you said the question included what kind of role the PA might have or can have. It must have a role. This is the elected government of the Palestinians, and it must have a role. And there must be one government for both Gaza and the West Bank. The division between Gaza and the West Bank is part of the problem. It's a split, and now we even have another split because part of Gaza is still controlled by the Israeli army, another part of Gaza is not. So now we might have Gaza East, Gaza West, and the West Bank. You can't have a state if you don't have one government and a territory that is one. And it's not my place to tell the Palestinians how they need to govern themselves. But I just want to say that it's really important that there is one agreed government, and the PA must have a role in it.
Thank you. Philip.
Maybe I'd like to zoom out from that question.
Yes.
At the bigger picture of where the global discussion is going right now, because the trend after 2 years of live stream genocide is currently not in favor of Israel, and is towards some form of anti-Zionism. Anti-Zionism in the sense not of the destruction of Israel, but of the departure from the idea of a Jewish state that is a state that sort of only belongs to the Jews as a nation, as is formulated in the nation state law that was passed a few years ago, towards a whatever binational a model. This is, of course, not the default solution in international law. We have many UN resolutions that say a two-state solution on a space that's tiny. In the US, I always say it's the size of New Jersey. It's very, very small. And how workable it is, anything is workable when there is political will. Everything is possible where there's a will. So I'm not saying that it's not possible, but we need to bear that in mind also as a sort of reality check. We're going to have probably a candidate as mayor of New York very soon who is openly anti-Zionist. There are some polls that are already over a year old from the United States and the UK asking Gen Z, so 18 to 24, 25-year-olds, a very simple question. Do you think Israel should exist? In the UK, 54% said no. In the US, 52%. I haven't seen any polls for sort of rest of Europe or Germany. But this was more than a year ago. So we need to bear in mind that that's also happening as a default solution in international law. When you have what you have now is basically a forced marriage where one side has the key and the other side is locked in a room and occasionally beaten and occasionally also beating back, but this is the situation. So when you have that situation, of course, the default solution is a divorce. To grant both sides the right to a divorce. Whether they can find an arrangement that works better, I think more practicable would be, there are many options on the table, from a confederation to a one-state solution. Is at the end of the day is not the role of the international community. Our role is to ensure that both sides come to the table in good faith and negotiate within the framework of international law, and then that's where it ends. Of course, in reality, that's not happening at all. Currently, the two-state solution has been declared dead. I don't know how many times. Again, where there's a will, there's a way. A workable solution in the, let's say, in the foreseeable future. It's definitely not for tomorrow. And it's probably not going to be implemented by Trump. But such a solution would, of course, have to have territorial contiguity somehow that can be technically managed. There were ideas of a tunnel that would go from the West Bank to Gaza, probably some degree of separation, but under the control of the Palestinian and Israeli speakers, some degree of separation to let spirits cool down will be necessary. But going forward, I think what is absolutely crucial, and this is something that Raluca referred to earlier, is a recognition of injustice and accountability, frankly, for war crimes. I could say on both sides, but the Palestinian Hamas leaders that were that the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for have all been killed by now, and so that the big challenge is to achieve accountability on the Israeli side. This is something that Israel could do itself, which is unlikely. Have a war crimes tribunal, or it could be the ICC, or some other form of international justice. But I think that is at the end more crucial for the healing, and on both sides. The psychological healing and the recognition that many red lines have been crossed, and then you can move forward. And then I dare say I'm a notorious optimist that in a way this horror that we've been witnessing over the past couple of years and for Palestinians over the past decades has been may also ensure that people never want to go back there again. At least this is the effect that it had in Europe. But it requires accountability, and it requires a recognition and an apology, which is also something that's in the paper, and it requires an apology from Germany as well. And I think Germany, since Germany is most in the habit involuntarily of looking itself in the mirror and dealing critically with its own past, we're probably the best placed to start this process.
Thank you. Can I want to get Karim in here on the question. I want to close at some point also the PLO and the governance question, because we have many more. But I've seen in the chat, and Raluca referred to it a bit as well. So the Trump plan basically says that this whole thing is only like to statehood, and it comes at the very end of the point plan, right? But it also is conditioned on a reform of the PLO, right? So do you have any details? So what is the thinking behind, what kind of reform is expected? And is that kind of a serious, I mean, asking something serious about something Trump did is a bit ridiculous, but, is there something, behind it? You also, as Palestinian, would say, that those are the things where we need to do better with the PLO, and this is something that's actually achievable, or is it, as Raluca put it, it's basically a way to make this impossible, because if you can always raise move the pole, right, and you just need to do another reform and then another reform, and so on, you will never get there. So give us an idea about this reform thingy.
Yeah, I also see this a lot of noise about reform, a lot of articles, a lot of interviews, a lot of also opinions about it, and a lot of people also make plans for this reform. But in reality, it's really complicated, because what you want to reform, what you want to reform, is the institutions, or the election system, or like economic system. So you need exactly to put your your finger exactly where is the problem in the Palestinian Authority government or institutions. Also, there is legal stuff between the link between PLO and the Palestinian Authority, because who created Palestinian Authority is PLO, and the president of PLO, he is the president of Palestinian Authority. What Mahmoud Abbas take decision last month is to reform this, to make separation, to make independency between PLO and Palestinian Authority, that at least PLO can be something for national interest, and Palestinian Authority can deal with the European institution, UN, that can make it easy to work in Palestine, in like West Bank and Gaza Strip. And this legal link was the problem, because Hamas didn't accept what PLO, sorry, has in their interior like constitution, their vision, their political project. So Hamas is not part of PLO, and Islamic Jihad is not part of PLO. So, and PLO is recognized by the United Nations as the only organization that represent Palestinian. So Hamas outside of this until now. There is a negotiations. It's since like 2005 between Hamas and Fatah. The last one took place in Egypt last week with the Egyptian government to try to make a national government, to try to make a national administration for Gaza Strip. And Hamas agreed, as they said, to leave the government in Gaza and not take any and not to play any role in Gaza in the future. But still, the problem is about uh, like the weapons of Hamas. This is the topic, and it's linked to the war. It's linked to the negotiations with Israel in Sharm el-Sheikh. It's linked to the next day. But the reform is taking a place. Mahmoud Abbas take a lot of decisions. He's trying to like kind of work on the corruption a little bit, and he announced some like he fired some people. He bring some people, they take like really high positions in the Palestinian Authority for corruption and stuff. And but I mean, also there is Muhammad Dahlan. I don't know. He's also Nasser al-Qudwa. These three figures are strong in the Palestinian Authority. They are taking like different part of the vision of Mahmoud Abbas. So now there is a new position. It's the vice president, which is Hussein Sheikh. So it's a lot of changing in the Palestinian Authority. And there was topic about the salaries that are paying to the like Palestinian prisons. They were in the, it was a lot of discussion about it since the first time of Trump in the presidency. Now I think they find a solution. So be a Palestinian Authority, sorry, will work in different ways. So they created an organization, not in the Palestinian Authority system, especially financial system, but at the same time they make it as kind of social support because there is a lot of families behind these people. There are a lot of you cannot cut their money. You cannot just tell them, I don't want to fund you in this horrible situation, especially in Gaza. So my opinion is saying Palestinian Authority needs a space, needs a space from the international community, from the Israeli government, because the Israeli government until now is trying to cut the taxes, tariff, money for the Palestinian Authority, which is making a lot of problem to pay the salaries, to make economic stability. You cannot tell Palestinian Authority that you need to reform while you are actually trying to make problems around it, trying to siege it, trying to put it in really difficult situation, and then you say they are not reforming themselves. And the last thing about the system, political system, Palestinian Authority decide, which was the Mahmoud Abbas statement. This is the last thing about it. He said Hamas will not participate in this style as in this political program in the next elections. And he said there will be democratic elections after 1 year of the ceasefire. This is what he said, and he created a new position. It's vice president, so there is a new position in the Palestinian Authority now, who's taking it, Hussein Sheikh.
Thank you. You actually mentioned a name, and actually many people here in the questions asked that as well. Ramona, for example, and many others that about Marwan Barghouti, and whether he could be a person that could unite the Palestinians going forward, as you described a bit. I think he is still in Israeli detention. So how could you maybe say a few more words about him, because I think it does interested quite a lot of people. Who is he, and what is this about?
Yeah, Marwan al-Barghouti is his case there is the Israeli narrative about his case, it's security narrative. But the Palestinian narrative about Marwan al-Barghouti, it's political leadership narrative. He's from Fatah party, but he's kind of taking a progressive in the peace thoughts, the peace solution, the solution of the conflict. In the Palestinian society, a lot of people support him for many reasons. In the last statistics, he take a huge part of the result as like I don't know, he can be not a president really because we have experience now with people who spend a lot of time in the prison and they take a leadership position. They take like president or leading the Palestinian system. I don't think he will be in the elections if he get freed. And I think there's also American request for that. Trump said he will look it up, and he's talking about Marwan Barghouti as a topic. And for me, that was something like, okay, why American government, especially in Trump way of dealing with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, are trying to put Marwan Barghouti in the system. But I mean, if the Israeli government released him, he could do something because in Hamas, like followers or fans of people, they also look at him as a national guy, not from Hamas Fatah perspective. Like they don't look at him as Mahmoud Abbas or the second big figure in Fatah, Mohammed Dahlan. No, they see him in the middle, that he could make a good relationship with Hamas and also making the peace process forward and keep the Palestinian rights on the table. And he's a strong personality. He has a lot of support from the civil society too. His wife, Fadwa, she's really strong. She's she's trying to put him on as a political figure all the time in the Palestinian public opinion and the discussions and the political life.
Yeah, yeah. Super interesting. Thank you. Want to go to the next question and get Raluca in here as well. This is the top question actually from all the questions. It's from Bruno Dembowski. He asked, how do you, judge the chance that there will be an end to the occupation and the settlements in the West Bank? And is there a majority, or how are the majorities in the Israeli society regarding settlements? And I think there was one plan. I watched a Arte documentary about the 10-point plan, and there was also the mention of a project called E1. I think that is close to Jerusalem. That would they said that would essentially kind of then split the West Bank into two parts if realized. So how's the opinion at the moment on the topic of settlements?
So the settlements is a very interesting question because we have a settlers government at the moment. It's a government that is controlled by extreme settlers and is giving them a carte blanche to be ultra violent against Palestinian residents in the West Bank. And the army supports them, and some of them serve in the army. The apartheid situation that we have in the West Bank is leaking into Israel, and it's taking over our entire system, a separate law for Jews and for Palestinians. So it's a very strong movement that at the moment it's really controlling the country. But it's a minority government. And most of the public don't support that. They certainly don't support the violence of the settlers. Of course, I mean, Israelis are mostly, like the mainstream Israelis, are concerned about their own security. and safety for themselves, their families. And that can lead to a fear that translates into supporting the war, supporting acts of war against Hamas or other parts of Palestinian society out of fear. And this is definitely something that we need to deal with as a society and to change that narrative. But there's a very big difference between these people that are led by fear to the extreme settlers that are led by ideological, fundamentalist, religious conception of Jewish supremacy. It's two different things. And the government is trying to mix the two and trying to pretend that the settlements are protecting the other Israelis and so on. But most of the public doesn't buy it. And the fact is that if all the polls are showing that if we will have elections today, then Smotrich's party, Smotrich is a settler, he's the finance minister, he's one of the parties is the far-right parties that are keeping Netanyahu's government alive. He's not going to pass the minimum threshold. And also the settlers' population, most of them are what we call lifestyle or life quality settlers. There's a big town of Orthodox Jewish community that is a settlement, but they're there because it's cheaper for them to be there. And we have basically a welfare state for Jews in the West Bank that makes it it makes it worth their while to live there. But it's not, if they would have another option, they won't be there. So we definitely need to fight to make sure that the settlers' ideology doesn't take over our entire country. It's a challenging fight, but I can really say that the majority of the population, if you actually show them, I mean, what is going on in the West Bank, and you manage to deal with the fear that the mainstream Israelis are feeling, then they don't support the settlements. And I think this is actually maybe one of the more easy subjects to solve in a diplomatic solution.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting that you say that's relatively easy. Want to hear the others on that question as well, but just to get an idea. So because you spoke about elections, right? So when is the next election due in Israel? And how are the polls looking at the moment?
Yeah. So the formal date is November 26th, a year from now.
A year from now, okay. Yeah.
It can be a lot sooner. It really depends. The government, I mean, there were so many injunctions during the last 2 years that we thought, okay, Netanyahu is going to go for early elections. He can't keep this going. We thought he has some kind of shame in him, some kind of responsibility taking, but obviously not. I mean, the man is only interested in his political survival and is willing to sell all of us for it. But now it really looks like when the war was keeping the government alive. Now the war is over, and Trump is saying that he won't let Netanyahu to go back to war. And if Trump doesn't lose interest, hopefully this is true, will remain true. So the government might not be able to pass the budget, the yearly budget, and might fall in March. And then we will have elections in June. So we can just only know like 3 months in advance when exactly this will happen. And the polls are not so bad for the, let's say, center left. When you take into consideration that any attempt to replace Netanyahu's government must include the Arab parties. The Arab parties are, I mean, Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated 30 years ago. not only for trying to reach a peace agreement with the Palestinians and end the occupation, but also because he did it with the support of the Arab parties in the Knesset, in the Israeli parliament. And since then, all of the Jewish politicians have been afraid of ending up like Rabin. If there will be a coalition of the Arab parties and the center-left parties, then we're taking the elections walking. It's really easy. The problem is that we have a very weak and not so good opposition that is not fulfilling its role, I'm afraid. So what we need to do as civil society is, as I said before, one thing is to make sure that the need to end occupation and reach a peace agreement with the Palestinians is the most important things on the agenda, but also that the opposition realizes that there is a big majority in the center-left public that wants a coalition with the Arab parties, and we give them the mandate to form such a coalition. So this is what we need to push for, to make sure that we win. And also, it wouldn't hurt if the opposition will actually present an alternative vision and not just say no to Netanyahu. Unfortunately, it's something that we see also in different countries in Europe, that the center left is very weak and very.
But why is that? So I mean, there can be different reasons for, weak opposition. It can be just because there are no people, there are like infighting stuff, but it can also be that actually the sitting government is making it difficult to organize. And, so what is, also we have also many questions about, the ability of the civil society in Israel and of course in the whole region to organize. So what is the reason for the opposition, center-left, Arab parties to be that weak in organizing as you described it? But why is that?
It's first of all, I think that Netanyahu has been, his first term started in 1996, immediately after the Rabin assassination, and there was like a short break. And then from 2009, again, he's in power. It's like the longest, and it's really not suited for a democracy. And he has corrupted our institutes in a very, very deep way. It's not only about money corruption and so on. Like the parliament is very, very weak. There's no balance between the three authorities. So nobody actually, nobody that is a prominent person, let's say in civil society, doesn't want to enter into politics because it's really hard to make a difference. If you're going to be part of the opposition, then you have almost no means to make an impact. So I guess it's not the best people that we have at the moment in the opposition, most of them, because of the imbalance and because of the destruction of our institutes, democratic institutes. And also, I think it's a global thing that leaders are afraid to actually lead, and they're too much relying on public opinion surveys, and they're trying to really reach to the point where everybody is already there, like to the most center, meaningless point of the majority supports, instead of using the data that is being collected to frame the best messages to take the people a step forward. It's a very short-sighted kind of way of making politics, that you're trying to do everything in your power to get as many votes now, and not thinking about your responsibility to actually present a vision. And that's like the last thing, that basically most of them are not presenting a vision, a compelling vision, an inspiring vision. They're just saying no to Netanyahu. That's obviously not enough. And they're doing that because they're afraid. They're afraid that if they will present an alternative, then they will get slammed for it, not understanding that this is actually their role as a leader. And that's really sad. I mean, the last real leader that we had is Rabin, and that was 30 years ago. And it's very, very sad.
Thank you. Well, there's nothing good to say about that. I want to continue with a question from Isabel Arendt, actually, who has asked many good questions in the Q&A, but I want to pick out one, and she told me that she needs sleep in a second. So I hope, Isabel, you still hear the answers. Otherwise, you have to listen to it in the recording. So Isabel asked, "What is the role of women involved in the political peace process?" She says there is no lasting peace without women, and I mean, Philip worked in the foreign ministry under Annalena Baerbock, who in the government kind of the feminist foreign policy was that the big point about during Annalena Baerbock's tenure as a foreign minister in Germany, and at least parts you did. And I wondered, so asking that to all of you, and I'm happy to anyone who wants to start. Maybe Philip, if you want to take it up from like the top, and then we go down to the individual people with Karim and Raluca. But I really wondered about that question, because if you look at this Blair Commission that is supposed to run the Gaza until the reform and everything is ready, and this is Tony Blair and a couple of dudes doing this. So this doesn't really look like women involved in the peace process. So Philip, do you want to take us from the top, and then we go into the region?
Sure. I would say, first of all, yes, women should be involved. I mean, as a matter of principle, as a matter of, by the way, also legal obligation. We have a UN Security Council resolution 1325 that says that we have to, also because peace agreements are longer lasting when they involve all of society. You mentioned the feminist foreign policy that hasn't brought us back closer to peace in the Middle East. I think it's not enough. That should happen. There's no doubt about it. But there's some other hurdles that need to be overcome. And if I may, I mean, this is kind of a different topic, but something that Raluca said about Rabin being assassinated. There is a certain tradition of Israeli leaders, or I should say Zionist leaders, that are trying to that are serious about finding a compromise with the Arab Palestinians that goes back historically until 1925. The foreign minister of the Orthodox movement, Zionist movement of the religious Jews, called Jacob Israel Dahan, was assassinated by the Haganah as he was trying to travel to London in 1925 after meeting with Arab notables to inform the British authorities who had the mandate over Palestine that there was a way to find a compromise that did not involve a Jewish-only state, but a shared state between the two. And then in 1933, you had someone called Chaim Alosorov, the head of the political department of the Jewish Agency for Palestine, who also had met with the Emir of Transjordan and had, although he was part of the mainstream Zionist movement, had changed his mind and said, we cannot establish a Jewish state here without eternal bloodshed. And who was assassinated on a beach in Tel Aviv. Then you had Rabin, and Raluca, you probably have your views on Ehud Olmert, but I think he was the only one who actually made the Palestinians an offer that was, I would say, broadly in line with international law, except that it was at a time when he was already indicted, was leaving office. There were re-elections, and it was very secret. I was in Palestine at the time, and we didn't know about it. I only found out years later, which was a pretty decent offer. He just signed it again with a former foreign minister, Nasser al-Qidwa. And he didn't have to get assassinated because he was already halfway in prison and was then barred from office for 10 years. So that's just a little aperçu on that.
Thank you. Still important. Karim, maybe on the role of women also in the Palestinian Authority. and then the peace process?
I guess this is also part of the reforms. They start to work on it, and I guess it's not just about, yeah, there is more big problem than women involvement in the political, especially policy makings, making decisions or something like this. You know, there is 1%, 100% young people are in leadership positions. So it's really a big problem. But it's also, I guess, this is my opinion, and about that, it's about how the political tradition in Palestine is. It's all the time about the leader are coming from a traditional political party. They are coming from how their past was in the Palestinian Revolution history. And yeah, there's also social reasons, cultural reasons that the society itself needs to work on, not just the political system. But I guess we have a little bit of civil society are working on that to make women are more in the public, not just in politics, but also in every part of the society, in the economy, yeah, but I mean, it's part of the reforms, and I hope Palestinian Authority will work on that because, and the Palestinian society is half women, half, I mean, 50-50. So we are a young society, uh, and the future must be like lead by the new
Yes.
generation, not old generation.
Thank you. Thank you, Raluca, on that. And I hand over to Amelie.
In civil society, we have we also have an organization that's actually dedicated to enforcing the 1325 UN resolution in all decision making in Israel. And we have a peace organization called Women Wage Peace that is doing amazing work, and they have a partner organization in Palestine as well. Unfortunately, in our politics has been radicalized in all aspects, not only regarding to the Palestinians, but also, I mean, the Orthodox parties, who used to be kind of a balance between the right and left, and they would go with either side. They was also part of Rabin's government in 92. But now they are really part of the far right, and there's no way that they're going to go with the center left. And also the ultra-nationalist religious settlers has really radicalized also when it comes to women and LGBT and all of that. They have a very fundamentalist, binary view of reality. There are men, there are women, and it's not the same. And there are Jews and there are Palestinians, and it's not the same. And these parties are not equal. So and these are people who are fundamentalist on all issues, actually. And it's really I feel like the fight that we need to fight is for equality on all fronts and for progressive values on all fronts. And we can't even actually separate these issues. And as long as we have this far right government, also women are not going to be part of the decision-making process. And of course, we need to change the government also because of the Palestinian issue, but also to have women as equal partners in the decision-making.
Thank you. Amelie.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to jump in with a question on the role of the media and journalists. So in Europe, for example, you can see the framing of how Palestinians are being talked about and how Israel is being talked about. Also in Germany, it feels like it's contributing to the imbalance that was also mentioned earlier. Yeah, how do you see the role of the media and journalists also for paving ways towards lasting peace, especially since so many journalists have been killed in Gaza? And I imagine it's difficult have this kind of media. How is it in Palestine and in Israel? Maybe for Raluca and Karim both.
Yeah, I guess the international media played a huge role to make the world knows about what's happening in Gaza, and also Generation Z played a huge role in this, because you see how young people in Gaza, they use their phones, their small social media platforms, such like Mu'taza, such like Bisan Aude, like some also journalists. But Israel also, the Israeli government targeted a lot of and killed a lot of journalists in Gaza, and they didn't allow any international journalists to get in Gaza in the justification of protection for them. But I guess the international media also played on the narrative to justify sometimes the war crimes that Israel did in Gaza Strip, because they bring the Jewish issue, they bring Hamas issue, and they make Hamas bigger than how it is. Hamas is not that big in Palestine. It's not the big political parties is in Palestine. It's not the majority of the Palestinian people. They are part of the Palestinian people. This kind of correct information was not used, was not present in the international media. Also, they are taking Hamas out of context sometimes to make whole Palestinian history is based on Hamas. But the Palestinian history is really long. It's more than 70 years old. It's not like 2 years. It's not 7th of October and after. And I guess it helps a lot. It helps a lot for activists to seek for justice, to raise the Palestinian voice, because they didn't have the space, the platform, the chance to talk, to express themselves. But yeah, it supports a lot, but at the same time, it created a lot of critical, really tough issues that the Palestinian people, they don't have until now, by the way. Expect some political figures like Hussam Zomlot in UK, and some political figures from Palestinian Authority. But I mean, even the people in Gaza, the civil society in Gaza, no one reached them from the international media to take their testimonies. Expect the legal stuff from UN and UN reports and EU reports. I mean, the international media needs to go more to hear the voices of Gaza people, to bring them on the table, to bring them on the air, to talk about what happened in Gaza Strip, to make it more clear for the international public opinion.
In Israel, we are, democracy is a spectrum, and we're not we're somewhere closer to what's happening in Hungary when it comes to free media. So some media outlets are propaganda, government propaganda. That's what they are. And also one of Netanyahu's trials is on him trying to buy the media. It's definitely something that he invested a lot in. And there are many journalists, so-called, they're not journalists, but so-called journalists, also in the mainstream, most popular TV channel, Channel 2, that are actually serving Netanyahu and his propaganda. So that's one problem. In addition to that, as in other parts of the world, the media is populist, it's shallow, it's just thinks about rating and about commercial interests, and it's much harder to find like real hardcore journalism. And the result is that the mainstream media in Israel has failed in the last 2 years. It didn't cover what's happening in Gaza. If you are an ordinary Israeli who doesn't consume international media, but just rely on the mainstream media, what you have when you open your TV in the evening after you come back from work, then they really didn't know what's happening in Gaza. So, and this is actually one of the campaigns that we did in the Zim in the last year, demanding the media to cover what's happening in Gaza. And there has been some change in the last few months, the change for the better, far from being enough. And part of what we need to search as a society on what we need to do differently and how we need to become better is the role of the media.
Thank you. Yeah, do you want to add something, Mr. Holzapfel?
Yes, if I may. I'll talk about German media, international media, European, Western media, more specifically, rather than Israeli Palestinian media, because the Raluca and Karim explained that very, very well. I mean, you have, of course, maybe one word on Israeli media. You have one excellent media outlet that I think is of course also under fire in Israel, which is the main news source or a major news source for what's happening in Israel and also in the in Palestine, which is Haaretz. They're having a conference in Berlin next week.
I'm going to speak there, by the way, if
Oh,
anyone.
great!
And I'm going to be at the Haaretz conference.
Yeah. But in terms of, I'd say Western media, there has, of course, been a long-standing bias in terms of the weighting. It's more biased by omission sometimes in German media. It's also biased by a certain framing that is partly ahistorical, partly simply ignoring a large part. So there are studies on this quantifying how many Palestinian children need to get killed to get media reporting, and Israeli children, and comparing that to Ukrainian children. I mean, it's pretty gory, but it's real. There's no doubt about it. In Germany, you can say that it's for historic reasons, but nonetheless, it changes when you have decades of a sort of manipulated narrative. It shapes the way you see the conflict, the way you understand it. There's a great deal of that. Otherwise, this whole episode would not have been possible, I think. And also I'd say dehumanization, which is also going in both directions. But it's, of course, given the asymmetry, it's the Palestinians that are suffering the brunt of it. And that dehumanization, I would dare say, starts with the myth that there is no partner for peace on the Palestinian side. The most generous offer, I'm sure everybody's heard that somewhere, which is simply historically not true. There was always a partner, and there's been a peace offer on the table for more than 20 years now. And this is not to say that Israelis don't want peace. I think intrinsically all groups of people want peace, but there are manipulators that seek to have people believe otherwise. When it comes to Gaza, I think what's clear is that we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg so far. As already mentioned, the longest standing international media ban. Completely unprecedented by a state that champions press freedom. You've only seen that from countries like Syria under Assad and Myanmar and Russia. They don't let international journalists in, but never a democracy. Then the number of journalists killed, the fact that you have ICJ orders from May of last year that are legally binding, that order Israel to cooperate and provide unhindered access to international investigators and fact-finding missions, that is also being ignored. So there's a massive assault on truth finding, on fact finding that's happening, and that's, I think, speaks to a bigger problem. Where some people say there's not a war going on in Gaza, it's a genocide, but there is a war going on, I believe, still waging, which is in the information space, the global information space, particularly the Western information space, which is something where the Israeli propaganda, if you will, or the strategic communication or public diplomacy has had the upper hand for decades, and is now losing, and you have sort of desperate attempts to roll that back, buying of TikTok, manipulating algorithms, etc. The larger problem that we have here, and you mentioned Gen Z as the generation that sort of showed an incredible resilience to propaganda in the context of this of the crisis, in a way that frankly impressed me as much as I was appalled by the lack of political will to stick to our own standards. The double standards narrative now is hurting Germany and Europe in a very serious way globally, and I think the repercussions of that are going to be felt for many years to come. The reason why I didn't engage too much on the what needs to be done right now is that I don't think that there's much better than sort of mitigation of a dire situation. I think in a few years' time, it's already foreseeable. It's as foreseeable as it ever has been, that public opinion will shift, and eventually public opinion will also translate into political into political action. What we have now is a very odd disconnect between public opinion all around the world, in the United States, in Germany, where you have large majorities of the population that see that the emperor has no clothes, but the grown-ups don't dare to say it yet. What I mean by that is you have all German polls show that a solid majority, sometimes 63%, sometimes over 80%, are disapprove of Israel's actions in Gaza, or disapprove or think there should be sanctions, think that Palestine should be recognized, etc. But the government is somehow not following. That's also what all the experts say. That's also what our strategic interests say, and that's also what international law says. But this disconnect, this situation is not tenable, and it will change over time as more facts are known. There are those, of course, we're in an age where you can see anything that happens anywhere else in the world in real time, and those who are frankly traumatized. I mean, I saw some of it. I stopped looking because it's just unbearable to see children ripped to pieces every day, and it was happening every day, and it's still happening every day. Those who looked are traumatized. Those who looked away will not be able to look away forever, because eventually the bodies will be dug out from the rubble, and we'll find out if we're talking about probably at least 100,000, maybe more. Some estimates go up to 600,000 people killed, and all the stories that were never could not be verified independently. That was sort of a standard disclaimer that you heard, at least in German media. Diese Angaben können nicht unabhängig überprüft werden.
Thank you. I think we should, since we're coming to an end, I would like to ask one last summary question, but thank you very much for the view on the German media. Yeah, the webinar is nearly over, and I think there's a lot of interest and a lot of questions received as well as to what specifically citizens can do, may it be in Europe, in Germany, or elsewhere. And I would like to ask all of you to give a really, really short kind of statement to, kind of what can we take from this webinar, and what can the people do. So I don't know, Karim, if you wanna start, and then everyone just gives a short statement.
I will talk from my experience. I lost my family in the beginning of this war. I lost my sister and my nieces, her husband, some of my other families. But I believe that there is hope, because we are talking about a huge conflict, historical conflict, and we are talking about very important topic that if it was fixed, if there is peace way, a lot of things will change, not just in Palestine, not just in Israel, but also in the region and in the world. Because the Palestinian cause is important, not just for the Palestinian people, but it's also important for the justice. It's important for the international law, because if the international community allow Israel to do what they did, that means anyone can do it, which is dangerous for the security of this world, which is dangerous of everyone. It's affected everyone in the world. It's not just in the region of Middle East. So what I believe, what I want to say, what I want to talk about is that there is hope. And this hope is the key of going forward, because if the Palestinian people lose the hope of taking their state, having their rights, that means I don't think there is peace process will work, because peace without justice will not work. Peace without dignity will not work. And also peace without acknowledging that there is Palestinian people are exist. There is Palestinian rights, and Palestinian people, they have to um, take the chance to prove that they can have a state. They can have their own state. They can have their own institutions. They can have their own country, and they will be part of this world, because we are part of this world. And we can, as a Palestinian people, go forward in this peace, because we are one of the most educated society in the region. And we have rich history, we have rich culture, we have rich diversity, we have really good experience in politics comparing to other countries in the region. We can do that, but we need also the international community. I mean, I'm not talking as a politician, but I'm talking as someone who's from Gaza, as an individual, to look really deep in the Palestinian suffering, and also that this pain, which is really huge, which is really deep, which is really too much for Palestinian people, especially in Gaza, they suffered a lot, and they need, I mean, to live in dignity like anyone in the world. This is, yeah, this is what I can finish in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karim. Thank you very much. Mr. Holzapfel, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'm going to be very brief on this. Und ich sag's auf Deutsch, wenn Sie sich engagieren wollen.
I'll finish in German. If you want to do something, Staatsraison.net, Raison AI, that's the spelling, then I suggest you read the paper, 8 pages, and if you agree with the content, I hope you agree with the content, then write to your parliamentarian, your delegates in parliament, and do ask the question, how why is we have legal obligations, and there's a huge difference, there's a gap between that and public opinion. Everybody has a right to live in dignity. That's what it's about.
Yeah. So first of all, Karim, I'm so sorry for your family. Really. We live in a very strange time when I guess all of the people maybe on this call are living in a democracy, but and as such, as citizens in a democracy, you know that you have the power to influence your governments, and also you know how much it is important to be a citizen of a state, of a sovereign state. Hannah Arendt talks about the need of everyone to be citizens in order to have rights. So you can understand how this situation in which Palestinians are not citizens is a situation that is not acceptable in the modern world of nation states. And I think you should do everything you can so that also Palestinians will be citizens as you are. At the same time, certainly in the United States, but also in other countries, we depend on the whims of leaders who are not really listening to public opinion. And in many ways, the global order that was put in place after World War II has collapsed. And everything we grew up on regarding democracy, rule of law, international institutions, they turned out to be very, very weak. And I think we have a shared responsibility to try to strengthen these institutions and these mechanisms. And it's very tempting sometimes to say that, the system doesn't work, so let's break the system. But we need the system. We in the Middle East need the system, and we need the involvement of the international community. So please don't break the system. And whatever you do, and I think that it's very important that you do something and raise your voices, please remember what Philippe said at the beginning, that it's not a zero-sum game. What is the right thing to do is right for both sides, for Palestinians and for Israelis, just for people, for human beings on both sides. And I think whenever you are thinking if you should support some kind of a position or a statement or a policy, think if it's good for both sides. And if it's good for both sides, it's the right thing to do.
Thank
And
you.
just one last thing, there are so many organizations in Palestine and Israel that you can follow. We also, at Zazim, we have a very small English list that you can join if you want. And there are so many other organizations that you can follow, and we can provide you with opportunities to act and to do something meaningful.
Thank you so much. Gonna include all the links to the Staatsraison, to Karim's sources, to Raluca's, what you mentioned, included to the follow-up email as well as with the recording. And I would say one thing, it's like at these 2 hours, now it's over 2 hours now, but I think it was super important. I learned a lot about the different positions, about the views, about the future, about the vision. I think that was super important. If you want to do one thing, then also you can share the recording with people. And nowadays there's AI, so you can ask AI to summarize the whole thing, right? If you don't want to listen to the 2 hours. No, but honestly, share it, share the stories, share what you have heard, that, we are kind of trying to turn public opinion so we get out of this null-sum game, as Raluca and Philip said, and go in a non-null-sum game. And I think that's so important. That's a very good thing to end on. I thank you all. Thank you, our speakers, the interpreters, the many people that have been in here asking questions. Was really excellent. Emily, thank you for co-moderating, and stay safe. Let's hope when we meet back in a year, we can maybe talk, about a new Israeli government, about really lasting peace and maybe an end of violence in the Gaza Strip as well. It would be great. So let's hope and fight that in a year's time things look better. And I'll end with that, and see you next week at Europe Calling as well. We're going to talk about the housing crisis in Europe, which is also a very important topic, but not for tonight. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great moderation.
Bye.